All right. Hello, 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 humans. Welcome to another Delic Live presents How to Grow Psychedelic Business, an intimate virtual conversation between business leaders discussing the good, bad, and potentially amazing parts of the psychedelic industry. Lions and tigers and bears, oh my! What's the real story? Let's talk about it. We're stoked to have over 1,000 of you here today gathered around the Delic campfire to talk about psychedelics. We're going to give away a pair of tickets to Delic 2021, the first ever psychedelic wellness summit, where you will see psychedelic culture and education presented to you in a way that you've never seen before. Next year, I promise. So we will be monitoring and choosing a winner from the audience. So ask your questions in the chat box and on Facebook. Definitely stay engaged. We want to hear from you. We'll announce that at the end of the show. Also, speaking of safety and psychedelics, it's super cool to be safe. Obviously, we're in a pandemic right now. You can get these one-of-a-kind Peter Schoof, an internationally renowned fine artist from Amsterdam, at thedelic.com. They're going super fast. We have about half of them left. I'm not sure if we'll print more, but get your Peter Schoof masks and stay cool and safe. Yeah, and safe in style. That's at thedelic.com. Before we get into the larger panel discussion, let's talk about growing, actually growing. How many of you have grown your own? I don't know, cannabis, tomatoes, business, family, education. It occurred to us here at Delic that the principles of growing crops that include timing, patience, wisdom, nourishment, teamwork, etc., apply to all aspects of growth in your life, and especially business. So before we jump into the roundtable, we have an exclusive, never before seen grow segment to kick off the discussion. You know her from Delic Radio, High Times Green Room. Siobhan Darwish is a curator and cultivator from Grow Sisters Media. She's a second generation cannabis farmer with over 30 plus years of cultivation experience. She is an all around badass. We love her at Delic. Check out thegrowsisters.com. Check out this video and ask the questions too below. We'll do a quick Q&A with Siobhan after the video.
I'm playing. Would you like to hear it?
The Grow Your Own movement in cannabis. So I am here to share with you a few of the different ways that you can grow your own mushrooms at home. The methods that I am going to be showing you are the easiest of beginner methods. They are the first time that I ever got to experiment with growing mushrooms. With that disclaimer, I am not a fungi pro. Yet. I am a beginner and I am thrilled to grow alongside of you. So let's look at the mushroom kits. Here we have the exciting adventure of my very first mushroom kit. Instructions read, drill hole into top. That didn't seem right. I don't know. Use a sponge. Okay, we got this. Drizzle water onto top. Okay, if I had this to do over, I would have soaked that thing because this particular one, even in my bathroom, didn't work out. Round 2. For the round 2 mushroom kit adventure, I purchased these kits from Q&H Mushroom Farm up in Washington. The kits included blue and golden oysters as well as lion's mane. Ideal indoor temperatures for mushroom growth are typically 65 to 68 degrees. All you need to do is keep them moist and at a relatively consistent temperature during their growth cycle. The mushrooms had already begun to fruit when I got them, so I cut off the top, acting as if this was maybe their first flush, just to see what they would do. So the instructions on the kit read, gently cut a circle at one end of the log with a clean knife. So I sterilized my knife. Very important to keep everything sterilized during this process. And even working with cannabis, it's the same deal. And here I am cutting the top off so that the mushrooms can bloom through the top. In retrospect, I don't know that I would have cut the top like that. I think I would have just pulled the plastic up and then cut the plastic off and revealed some of the top. But you live, you learn. So for next time, I will do it differently. In the room that I'm going to be keeping them in, I do have a LED light that I use for cannabis clones. You can see that these racks were being used to grow something else, so it was kind of the ideal spot. But you will need a well-lit area for your mushrooms to grow, but not in direct sun. If you can get that sun to bounce off a wall or something like that, it would be better. Keeping in mind the amount of water that mushrooms need, you will want to spray these multiple times a day, so pick a location that you don't mind getting wet. And within just about 12 days, I had mushrooms. One of the things that really helped was I realized that they were not moist enough. So I built a fruiting chamber, which is a clear tote so that the light can get in, with holes drilled into it so that the air can still move, and included perlite with a bit of water at the bottom to create that humidity. And this was hugely helpful. I apologize that I did not get any photos of this, but please stay tuned because I will definitely be doing more how to grow your own mushroom videos. In favorable conditions, your mushrooms will begin to appear in 7 to 14 days. It was right around 7 days that our mushrooms started to fruit, and they doubled in size overnight. When harvesting your mushrooms, do not slice off with a knife. Gently twist them one complete turn to free them from the growing medium. Be careful not to damage the growing medium surface. It is better to not cut the mushrooms off, because in doing so, it leaves a stump to rot, which later can inhibit the fruit of the next crop. These kits, fruited, or in proper mushroom nerd terms, was able to flush 3 times. This project paid for itself 3 times over. Studies show that consuming mushrooms as a part of your diet can relieve hypertension, improve gastrointestinal health, fight off cancer, and reverse diabetes. They're one of the few vegan sources of vitamin D and protein, and much easier than farming livestock. They're full of fiber and low in fat. They might help ward off cancer, heart disease, and neurodegenerative diseases. Psychedelic mushrooms alter consciousness in a profound and novel way that increases the range and fluency of cognition. We must free ourselves from our dependency on a food system created to control us. Growing your own food is a way to not only empower yourself, but lower the impact on the earth by not creating extra packaging and shipping waste. It is each and every human's basic right to grow their own food and medication. I love all mushrooms, but if I had to pick a favorite, I could. I absolutely suggest growing the lion's mane. The lion's mane mushroom can be enjoyed raw, cooked, dried to add to smoothies, or steeped as a tea. Their extracts often used in over-the-counter health supplements. Many describe their flavor as seafood-like, often comparing it to crab or lobster, and it truly did taste this way. Lion's mane mushrooms contain bioactive substances that have beneficial effects on our bodies, especially the brain, heart, and gut. Studies have found that lion's mane mushrooms contain two special compounds that can stimulate the growth of brain cells. Additionally, studies have found that lion's mane may help protect against Alzheimer's disease. So get out there and experiment and enjoy, and know that there is no wrong way to grow, because you can grow your own way. Enjoy. Know your sisters love you. I know you have a lot of questions. Save those till the end, where I will be live. In the future. Live, coming to you.
All right. That's amazing. Siobhan, thank you. Oh my God, that was amazing. Siobhan, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I'm so sorry that this is I don't know where it's playing.
No, you're good. So you're good. That was really beautifully done. We will we'll connect that to this in a cleaner way, and we'll have that for everybody too. Of course, these live events live on YouTube. They live after the live event, and you can rewatch them. Our first one was on Bicycle Day. Our second one was on microdosing, and this one is on how to grow psychedelic business. The next one is September 1st. Okay, can you answer some questions?
Absolutely.
Oh my God. But first of all, where are you? Because we've got Jesus in the background, which I recognize because I'm also wearing a Jesus is Psychedelic jacket.
Yes, girl. Thank you for the jacket. This is incredible. I get questioned and questions about it all day.
Amazing.
But he was psychedelic, so it works. I am sitting in the fungi lighting, the sweetest seat, a seat in Humboldt, and I don't know if you guys can see this okay, but it's inside a huge redwood, and it is covered in glass mushrooms. How cool are those?
Amazing. Who did that? Your homie, what's his name?
My good friend Cyrus. He is the artist that did this, that does this, and hopefully he will be showing at other events soon here in the future that you can see his art. And please check out Fungi Lighting on his page, Get Lit. He's got some beautiful glass pieces.
Oh, amazing. That's super dope. I wish I was there. All right, let's do a quick few questions. Let's introduce Madison, an amazing teammate, and she's got some questions from the audience for you.
Hello, thank you everybody for submitting your questions. I've got a few here for you. One of the first ones was about the methods that you use to keep things sterile.
Oh, this is a great question. 70 to 90% alcohol almost constantly, and especially with cannabis as well. So if you're doing anything, I know this sounds crazy, and especially in these times, I carry the alcohol swipe pads with me now. And so if I'm doing anything, I will just swipe my scissors, swipe that kind of stuff. You can put it in a spray bottle and dilute it and wash it down. Great question, and probably number one when dealing with growing fungi.
So another question was about the kinds of substrates that you use and if you have a preference.
I love this question too. So each mushroom is going to want a different substrate, and that really just depends on what mushroom you are interested in cultivating. I personally really like using grain. I was not able to do any of the content with the grain mushrooms because they're not to be shown. But I love using the grain because after you can make SMS, which is spent mushroom substrate compost, and I do use that compost on my garden. So keep in mind when you are cultivating your mushrooms that you can use that substrate later for your other plants.
So another question was, can mushrooms be grown hydroponically?
Oh, I don't know the answer to this. This is a very, very good question. I imagine one of the incredible humans that are going to show after me will probably have an answer to that question. That is a really good one. Let's look into that.
I'm going to say yes. I'm going to
Why
go with
not?
yes.
Yeah. Yeah, who's doing that? Let's get them on.
So another question I thought was great is about the lighting. Do you have to imitate natural light, like light and darkness? Do you need to set a timer for your mushrooms?
Oh, that's a really good idea. I did not. I left the LED light, which is a very low bulb light, on 24 hours, just like you would with clones.
I see a few more questions coming in right now. One is about pre-sterilized substrate. Do you have any experience with that?
Oh, yeah, I do. And, you know, that is something that you could definitely order. However, you can just do it yourself. So the price difference is only about $5 or $6. Great question, actually, because when I first started doing it, I looked into just purchasing everything. But then when it came down to it, I realized that you can actually just make your own. So, yeah.
Grow your own.
Last question here for all of the beginners in the house. Someone asked, is the substrate the strain? So I think we need to like take it a step back and explain what that is.
Yeah, so the substrate is the medium, is anything that the mushroom is itself being held, being provided a space to grow in. And it is providing it with nutrients and stuff like that. So yes, the genetic or strain is definitely going to be different. Or is it different from cannabis? It wouldn't be a strain, would it? Is there a strain of mushroom? There's so many questions, everyone. My goodness.
I have a question. Do you like sing to your mushrooms or do anything
We dance.
to infuse them with love? You dance?
Yes.
Do you find that they taste better?
Most definitely, just like the cannabis. Anything that is grown with love has got that little extra special. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we can apply that to business, which is what we're going to talk about in a few minutes, right? So hopefully people can draw the line from watching your beautiful how-to videos or just growing their own food with their hands. That applies to business. There are businesses that are built without love and hard work, but they don't last very long. And so, yeah. Thank you, Siobhan. You're amazing. We love having you on. That video is beautiful, beautiful. Everybody check her out at thegrowsisters.com. And what else you want to tell us before you take off?
Well, first and foremost, thank you so much, Delic team. It has been an absolute honor to work alongside of you and to get to do this, to present this with you. It's been excellent. So thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Delic, and everyone. You can grow your own way. There is no wrong way. There is no right way. But just get in there and test it out and try it. And please follow the Grow Sisters. You can find us all over. Love you all. Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you, sister.
See you in May.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Oh, we got a surprise guest. Oh, wow. Okay. It's my friend Zappy. Mike Zappy Zappelin. Oh, yes. He's a co-founder of the Ketamine Fund, which is a 501c3 that provides free ketamine treatments to individuals having suicidal ideation with the mission of lowering suicide rates by 75%, which is an amazing aspiration. But also you're working on something new that you hit me up the other day about, and I thought this would be a great opportunity for you to bring it out of the closet. So what are you working on in terms of microdosing?
Yes, thank you very much. So this is like a breaking news type of thing. We started a social movement, just looking at what's happening in society with the pandemic and just psychedelics in general. We thought we need to start a social movement, and we've called that the Mind Army. And I invite everybody here to go to mindarmy.org at some point and to check it out and become a member. What the idea is, the Mind Army is fighting for the right to pursue happiness. And this is so inalienable that it's in the Declaration of Independence. And our concept is that we are demanding the right now to go inside our own minds for answers and healing in any way that we can because of this, simultaneous suicide epidemic, depression epidemic, addiction epidemic. And now we're coming out of this pandemic with, a lot of PTSD and trauma that's happening right now. And so we are asking the President of the United States to write an executive order to make all psychedelic compounds legal. And what happened was back in October 1966, starting with LSD, these compounds were made illegal. And they, under the guise that they needed to be studied for safety. And at the time, that pretty much made sense. Everybody, you wanted to study to make sure they're safe. Now, 53 years later, millions of people have had experience with these substances, many with great benefit. And we're not going to sit here in the middle of a pandemic epidemic and just wait around for the government to come through or local organizations to get this done. We can't do that. We're in a crisis. So the Mind Army is basically demanding the right now. We want the president to write an executive order making these things legal. People have the right to go inside their own minds. This is like your number one human right. You can't even know how you feel about other rights if you don't know where you're resonating at. And so I've already had a meeting with a senior Trump advisor, and we've told them he will win the Nobel Prize if he writes this executive order. Even if half the people don't like him, he will win the Nobel Prize because he's going to make an actual dent in the suicide issue and the addiction issue and the mental health situation we have going on.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm gonna jump in real quick.
Sure.
Okay. I think I heard wind of this a few months ago, and let's talk about it. Let me be devil's advocate here. So,
sure.
And I agree. It is a natural human right to consume or to choose to consume anything that you want. How realistic, though, is it to focus on this president? And I mean, like the chances that he would do anything like that are really slim to none, although it would probably save his second term. So what are you talk about strategy? So this is obviously not a short-term game. You're in this for the long haul. How is creating presence about this right now with this administration? How do you see that taking you into the next year or so as we actually gallop towards the end of the drug war?
That's a good question. I mean, what we feel is that in the past, 6 months ago, this would have been impossible. A year ago, no president's going to sign on. But we have this situation that's so dire. We're really in like a biblical science fiction type movie where really bad things are starting to happen within society, suicides and things like that. San Francisco, the hotline for suicides is up 8,000% right now. Okay. And we're just starting this. So we have a goal of getting this done very quickly. We want it done by next Memorial Day. We don't think that you can be sending people off to war and having them killed and then come back and they can't fix themselves from that PTSD. So to your point, we are establishing lobbying efforts where we are going to lobby for the next year with congressmen and senators. But, I was trained on Wall Street and they said, go to the top. Do not speak to the person's secretary, their wife, their husband, their accountant. Only the person that can write the check. And the only person that can sign an executive order right now is the president of the United States. So we are going to go to him and appeal that he will win the Nobel Prize. If it's not Donald Trump and it's Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, had a drug and alcohol addiction issue, and he fixed that using ibogaine. So we're going to have the conversation with him and say, hey, if it's good enough for your son, it's good enough for everybody else. Just because we maybe don't have the $15,000 to send our kid to Mexico or to the Bahamas to get this done, we deserve this. And I think, when people ask me how realistic this is, I think it's very realistic, because you've got a situation where they may not want to pull the trigger today, but I'm kind of prognosticating some very dire things happening soon in society. And when those things happen, I think there's going to be a knee-jerk reaction. And I would forecast, unfortunately, and I don't want to even put this into the ether, but it's so real that I have to, that, if they don't do this now, they're probably going to do it when 50,000 teenagers one day commit suicide online simultaneously. And that's the type of thing that we're headed towards. It's really scary. But the only way you fix that is you allow people to get back to their original frequency.
I agree. And allowing people to be even just educated about what's available to them so that they can make their own informed, wise decisions. Look, super noble cause. However, we can help you, Zappy. We're down. We got a lot of questions about what people in the audience, in the Meet Delic audience, can do to help you elevate your mission.
Yes. Okay. So one of the first things we're doing is we're putting together a microdosing handbook. Okay. So we feel like if this executive order is immediately signed, that we want to have a handbook out there that's going to allow people to safely and effectively start with these things using just microdosing. We've got MAPS on board. We've got double blind. We've got third wave. They're all contributing content. And we've got some luminaries in each of the catalysts that are going to put their protocols into the mix. So this is going to kind of be like an alchemist cookbook of what to do. And I invite anybody that's watching this or that sees this to join. And if you have content and things, we're going to put these together. We're going to try to give out millions of these digitally, but we also want to create a physical copy like the one that you showed there. And those we expect to be around for the next 20 years, the content. But we also expect that we want to put these in kind of subversive places. We want to have these things show up, at the RNC. We want these to be in very high profile places so that people start to think, oh, you know what? This is getting normalized, because I think that's what this is all about. It's about normalizing this reality. And the reason that we jumped into this really fast recently was I was on a panel. I was on with a Future of Psychedelics panel, and Rick Doblin from MAPS was the keynote. And they asked him when he thought psychedelics would be legal. And he said 2035. And I was like, 2035? Oh my God, like humans won't even be here in 2035 if we don't get psychedelics legal. We'll be in like nuclear
I think that's
winter.
Because the model, I think that's based on a MAPS model, which is not super quick or scalable. But I think the need is now. The need has been, and that's great. So I love the idea of an actual printout, just spread, hopefully on recycled paper or something good for the environment, but spread out across the world. I think that's amazing. So is there a website people can go to?
Yeah, you can go to mindarmy.org to check it out and become part of the army, number one. Number two, we are going to start a task force that we would like a lot of people to be involved in. This is for the entire psychedelic community to be involved in the Mind Army. But we're going to put together a task force so when these things are legalized, that we can pull together, for example, all the psychedelic communities that exist in all the cities already. And they can be like the resource where, like at a Grateful Dead concert, I'm a Deadhead. There were a lot of people who would, not a lot, but there were some people who would give up seeing the show and just go into the tent and help people that were having a bad trip.
Yep.
And those people exist. We already have them. We just have to bring this to the surface and allow those people to be helpful. And then we need to create educational material, which obviously Delic and these other groups are putting together incredible content about psychedelics. So if we can educate and we can have that safety net, then I'm not, here to wait for, like cannabis did. I think, we learned from cannabis, we can't wait years and years for states and counties and everybody to get there on the same page. We need to demand this as like a human right. And just personally speaking, I've have a 14-and-a-half-year-old daughter. I have a 19-year-old daughter. And I actually had to, during this pandemic, bring them to a ketamine doctor to do ketamine treatments, my own family, because that's the situation that we're all in as a society, as a family. And there's no other way when a kid is sitting in their room going, oh, life's boring. It's like Groundhog Day every single day. There's no way you can show them that there's a bigger picture unless they have the chance to go inside their own minds and see, aha, there really is a lot of option sets here and a bigger picture. And so I had to deal with that in my own life. And I know every family is dealing with that, either that or addiction. And I'm demanding this human right back right now.
Beautifully said. I love it. Well, thank you for popping in here and sharing your wisdom and your cause. Everybody go check out the website. Zappy, thank you so much. I can't wait to talk to you again soon. We really appreciate you.
You guys too. You're doing a beautiful thing. Thanks,
Thank
Delic.
you, sir.
Bye.
All righty. All right, guys, without further ado, let's get into our roundtable. Don't forget to ask questions. We'll be giving away tickets to Meet Delic 2021 at the end of the call. And if you're interested in being safe with style, go to thedelic.com and get this amazing Peter Schiff mask. These are one of a kind. I'm not sure if they'll ever be available again in the history of the world. So go check it out, thedelic.com. They're super cool. And we love them. Okay, great. Let's get into our roundtable, of course, how to grow psychedelic business. We'll be doing a Q&A at the end of this, of course. All right, so let's talk about it, guys. The psychedelic industry exists. The psychedelic industry that everybody debates about within the space and our circles, should we or should we not, already exists. So that's baseline. It's called the underground market. The demand for psychedelics is increasing in the millions, and not just in America, although a recent study shows that over 32 million Americans have used psychedelics at least once. And that's a snippet data point. Of course, we all know it's a lot more than that. The US spends $238 billion a year on mental health treatments, most of which that do not work, and ancillary services. So as Zappy said, the mental health crisis that existed before the epidemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, as if the mental health crisis wasn't enough of a reason to pay closer attention to the potential health benefits of psychedelics, the COVID-19 pandemic is certainly creating new trauma and more suffering on a global scale. So how are we going to respond to that? And here's the question I want to open with. How do we bring the psychedelic industry that already exists, or part of it, into a legal marketplace that serves the mainstream? I started Delic to speak to a mainstream audience, an audience that I consider myself and my family and friends a part of. Or is it a new industry altogether, and we leave the black market the way it is, as cannabis did and has done and is still doing? And so today we're going to talk about it. So before we get into it, let me introduce our amazing panelists and thank them for taking time today to speak with all of you. Brittany Hoogenboom, owner and practitioner of Synergy Soul, is a practitioner of Santeria, Lukumi, and Ifa, which is a big part of her life. In her work, she is a spiritual-based business, money mindset, and personal power mentor. Check her out at synergysoul.org. We also have Ronan Levy. He is the co-founder of Field Trip Health. Ronan is also a partner at Grass-Fed Ventures, a venture capital and advisory firm focused on cannabis and biotech industries, and a member of the board of directors for Trait Biosciences, Inc., a leading biotech company in the hemp and cannabis industries. Welcome, Ronan. Check him out at fieldtriphealth.com. Next, we have Alex Speiser, COO of Orthogonal Thinker. Orthogonal Thinker is a wellness platform dedicated to individual and collective well-being via psychoactive compounds and clean label products. I love that phrase, clean label products. If there's anything we want clean in the world, it's our water and our psychoactive compounds. Speiser is an early stage startup investor with a track record of successful ventures and strategic roles. Check him out and his work at orthogonalthinker.com. Last but not least, we have Beth A. Weinstein, a spiritual business coach. Using her experience growing multiple businesses, including 3 of her own, along with neuroscience-backed methodologies, spiritual teachings, and practical business action plans. Beth has spoken on multiple stages, podcasts, and summits, and has been featured in the New York Post, Huffington Post, and more. Check her out at bethweinstein.com. All right, so let's get into it. I started Delic Corp, which is AKA Delic Corporation, 2 years ago. I was enthralled with the idea of a corporation. And trust me, I've been a part of many. I came up in the corporate world. My first gig was for the Catholic Church, the Archdiocese, raising money for them. And so I was enthralled with this idea of what would it look like if a corporation operated on psychedelic principles. What would a corporation look like with psychedelic DNA? So it was kind of a joke, but also very serious experiment. So let's just get into it here with my panelists. Let's talk about business philosophy and how do you grow your own business? I'd love to start with beautiful Brittany. And that money, and that money mindset you talk about, I think so interesting.
Hi, I am so excited to be here. The sun is setting over here in Tennessee. It's just so beautiful, but this is really, really awesome. And the first thing that I wanted to talk about is breaking the stigma around money mindset, because a lot of us, and I was reading people's comments from some of the posts on Instagram, that with those of us who are, how can I put this, so earthly associated, if that makes sense, with like natural medicines and growing our own food and sustainable living, a lot of the times we have this mixed mindset around money. Money is evil. Money is evil. Money is evil. Money is evil. And so the thing that I work a lot with with my clients is because a lot of them, most of them, if not all of them, are spiritual based practitioners. So our elders are the ones that say money is bad because the oppressor has the money, right? And so when we switch our mindset to look at money as opportunity, money is a way to give back. Money is a way to provide generational wealth for not only our ancestors, but for people coming after us. It gives us the space to expand and elevate in many different ways. And especially in a business where it's psychedelics, which is medicine, when we get money in the hands of the right people, we are able to change, not just the small spaces, but the big spaces. And there's like this really, I have this unpopular opinion of kind of like taking over, right? It's like taking over. If all the people with the money are doing the things that are opposite, if we can get all of the money in the hands of those who are going to make a difference in the world, it will make a huge difference. And I know people don't really like that thought of like, well, we can't take from somebody, but it's not about taking, because money is really an unlimited resource. And I know a lot of people don't think about it like that, but it's an energy. And that this day and age is really just printed on paper. And
they print more of it.
Yeah, exactly.
We're just printing more of it right now as a country.
Yes, exactly. Every single second, right? So there's really no such thing as lack. There's really no such thing as lack. We are abundant beings. We can grow our own food. We can take care of each other. We know how to heal our minds, so money is really just an unlimited resource that gives us opportunities to expand the things that we are here to do to change this world. And so breaking through that stigma, the first thing of being able to grow a business with something that's not really seen by the masses is breaking your own mindset around, first of all, profiting off of it, but also your business in general. Because as a spiritual practitioner, even in my own community, I have dealt with a lot of backlash around the amount of money I make or what I teach, or, but you have to get behind it. It's your mindset. If you can't get behind what you're doing, then people are not going to get behind what you're doing. And like we were talking about before, building a good team, right? Building a solid team is also matching your mindset with that team so that everybody is on the same page when it comes to making money with something that is going to change the world.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. What are some other concepts that you work on in your business with your clients?
We work on trusting your investments. We work on no such thing as competition, because that's a huge thing in our world. We are watching in this pandemic, my neighbor, I want to tell this little story really quick. My neighbor works with a company called Benefect, and it's a cleaning solution that started in Canada because the owner's son has multiple autoimmune disorders. So the Benefect is made with thyme. And one of their sales pitches is that they drink it. Well, he just got a deal. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say this, but he got a huge deal with Disney. And so watching this product that is the least toxic cleaning supply, right? We could wipe out all cleaning supplies with this. It's on the list now, on the list for the APA for Corona. I had a conversation with him recently because he said, one of my biggest competitors is trying to also get this contract with Disney. And I told him, there's no such thing as competition when you believe in your business, because there is always more than enough to go around. And when we had that conversation about no such thing as competition, and just remembering that if you don't get this contract, you're going to get another one. If somebody gets this one that you wanted, there's still something else for you. Well, he ended up getting the contract. And I told him, that's that mindset, is we don't have to compete with people. The competition world was made I feel like it was made by people who really didn't believe in what they were doing, or still don't believe in what they're doing, and need some type of like toxic masculine energy to back up so that they could really show up in that space. But ultimately there's no such thing as competition. And that goes back to abundance being our birthright, abundance being who we are, abundance being, just our beings. Like, we are abundant beings, right? And so that's a huge thing that I teach my clients, especially because there are so many business coaches and spiritualists and just everybody trying to change this world together, that we have to remember that we're working together and this is not a competition. Another thing too, like I said, is trusting your investments. So knowing that there's I can't swear, but there's no such thing as effing something up, right? You cannot F something up. You
totally swear, by the way.
What, I can swear?
Sure.
Oh, you can't fuck anything up, because if you invest in something and you fuck it up, you don't lose. You just learn, right? So learning to trust your investments and where you're putting your money is important. And it's not just trusting your investments, it's everything that you do. You're your own investment, right? So I had a client recently who said, I invested in, she actually takes all my courses, but she took a course before mine. And she said, I feel like I just threw that money away. And I said, but did you learn anything? Because there's no such thing as fucking anything up. When you trust your investments, when you trust every move that you make, when you know that whether you believe in spirit or God or the universe or whatever is always supporting you in your growth, and you are passionate and you love what you do and you are for that of the greater good, you cannot fuck anything up. You have to believe in yourself, and you have to believe that the outcome will always be the best.
And just keep going. Just keep swimming.
Yeah.
Stamina counts.
Yes, always. You really, sometimes it feels shitty when you fail at something, but really you just have to look at, what is it that I gained? What is it that I gained? What can I pivot, right? I don't ever look at failure as something bad. I look at it as an opportunity to pivot something in my energy field that's going to now help me expand in a new way.
Beautiful. I love it. Thank you so much. That was a beautiful answer. I couldn't have said it better. Beth, I feel like you might have some wonderful things to add in your work as a practitioner. What is your business philosophy, and how do you grow your business with psychedelics in mind?
Yeah, so I agree with everything Brittany was saying. I was sitting here laughing and shaking my head because me and her come from the same paradigm, which to me is all about the new earth that we're here creating. So I'm a business coach. I actually help people start and grow their businesses, and most of my clients are actually moving out of jobs, traditional roles that they just don't like, and into the path of entrepreneurship. And so the way I weave psychedelics into my business and their businesses as well is, so I'm very deep on the plant medicine path, working with most of the sacred medicines, and so are a lot of my clients. And as you know, for those of you who are very familiar with the work of psychedelics, they really wake you up to who you truly are and what's really living inside your heart. And I'm pretty much doing the integration of the awakening of coming into your purpose, into alignment of what you're here to do, and putting it into practice. So I don't actually, I mean, some of my clients are actually on the path of being psychedelic integration coaches. Some are therapists working with psychedelics, kind of bordering legal and illegal. Some are integrating it in ways that are a little underground, but I try not to go there. But what I do is I help people actually take these visionary messages that are telling them like, hey, you're in the wrong job and you're actually here to do this. Like, let's say you're here to be a life coach, or you're here to be a healer, or you're here to be an artist. You can drink ayahuasca for 5 years and hear the same messages over and over and over. But if you don't actually bring it into the reality of the 3D plane that we're still living on right now, it's like, what's the point of working with all these psychedelics? Like, yes, they expand your mind, but to me, it's about bringing it back into Earth and creating a better planet, creating a better life for yourself, creating a better life for all. And this to me is what this conversation, on a larger scale, the business of psychedelics isn't, because I was one of those people, Brittany, I posted on Instagram, I got some backlash, like, oh, psychedelics should all be free. I'm like, you guys, have you ever seen the amount of work it takes to grow and produce most of these medicines? I mean,
they're not free.
It's not
free.
My garden has cost me like thousands of dollars just to set up and grow tomatoes and basil. It's like, let's be honest here. None of this really, like, ayahuasca doesn't really grow wild in most parts of the world. And if it does, it's being pillaged anyway. So, I take a different stance, like very much like Brittany's, where it's about empowering people to really embrace money as the energy of love. And this is hand in hand with the messages that are coming through these sacred medicines right now, and expanding the consciousness of humanity. And to me, I really feel strongly about the more people on this planet that are exposed to the power of these medicines, the more we're going to have the kind of planet that we want, right? Like, we're all seeing the
numbers.
Yeah, the collective it's being played out. The shadows are coming to the surface. There's a lot of confusion, complication. I agree exactly with what Zappy said. Things are going to get harder. They're not going to get easier. They're not going to normalize any day now. And to me, this is one of our saviors. So if we don't embrace this as, to me, business is just language, it's terminology. It's like, you can call it what you want, but it's on a larger scale. It's about a grand mission of creating a better planet and a better life for all, because otherwise we're going to have people committing suicide. We're going to have PTSD. We're going to have people, living with depression, living lives like when they should be living fully. Everybody
already are
to live. So this is kind of how I tie it into business and more like stepping into one's purpose. And then also, we all know this is on the rise. A lot of coaches are now toying with, assigning microdosing to their clients, or, facilitating some underground work. And it's like, you know what, I do believe that it's better to just embrace it and actually start working with it responsibly versus just like the Wild West. So this is what we're all here to do. And I do believe this is the future. And again, like Brittany said, if this gets into the hands of the right people, imagine what our world could be like. So that's my stance. And I completely agree. I'm like, money to those of us, those of us that are thinking like this.
Yeah.
It's just, the conversations around money have been so complex for eons and centuries, and it's, it's a different paradigm, but we're
wildly complex. We need to demystify money. And I think it's beautiful what you are saying, what you both are saying about, if you put the power back into the hands of the consumer, all of us use money, first of all. So there's very few people that live off the grid fully. And so if you can change your mindset in anything that you feel resistance towards, if you can reframe it for yourself, you gain the power back, and you can then manifest what you want. Because we're all super magical creatures without psychedelics. And I don't think that psychedelics are going to save the world. I think people are going to save the world. But listen, you can't unsee what you see when you consume certain plant medicines, and definitely a hack through a lot of the mental health and negative dark things that the world is feeling right now. Thank you, Beth, so much.
Thank you.
All right, so let's talk about destigmatization for a second. Alex, I love like the concept of orthogonal thinker and what you guys are doing. And I think a lot about practical steps to destigmatize psychedelics. Obviously, there's talking about it, there's getting into people's energy bubble, and then they feel comfortable talking about it, then they talk to their family about it, and so on and so forth, word of mouth. And then I think about the marketing that got us into the mess that we're in, where most of these substances are now illegal, like the DARE program, and things of that nature. So I'm for marketing when it comes to psychedelics, because it's a way of storytelling and getting into people's hearts. It's Hollywood. What do you guys think, Alex, over at Orthogonal Thinker, about destigmatizing?
I mean, in general, with a lot of this stuff, I'm kind of like a pendulum in that, when Brittany was talking about manifesting money, I kind of initially went to my experiences that my mom imparted me, where she dated Jackie Leary, Timothy Leary's son, when Timothy was called most dangerous man in America. So I'm like, oh my God, if business circles out of control, everyone's just trying to manifest money, we're going to be back where we were in the 60s, and that's going to be the worst case scenario. But at the other hand of the pendulum, I kind of think about the overwhelming data and how all this clinical work that's gone on over the last 20 years or so, albeit super restricted, now demands for businesses. How else are you going to transform market economies if you don't have businesses? So I think when it comes to destigmatizing, I always go back to the data. I always go back to the transformational stories. And I think if we can contextualize those foremost into an educational environment and use them to mobilize political movements and educated discussions about how transformational these medicines can be, I think that businesses will stand to benefit from it. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And I think it's up to the businesses to be ethical and to be aligned with those educational entities so that everyone's incentives can be aligned here. I think, in terms of like mainlining the zeitgeist or anything like that, it's going to be a dance. I mean, we're walking a razor's edge right now, but I think the momentum that's built up, I know Ronan says that he anticipated a lot of this. I anticipated some of the growth that psychedelics would take on. But we could have never anticipated COVID. We could have never anticipated the demand for these businesses. So I don't know. I think it's a mix of just trying to capture the momentum, but also being super thoughtful.
I love it. Well said. Well, what say you, Ronan? I mean, it's been 15 months since we put the shovel in the ground for Delic, and we were standing out there all our own for a couple months, or it certainly felt that way. And now it's like an entirely different world, and it's happening super fast, way faster than cannabis did, but also thanks to cannabis. What do you think about destigmatization and what we're seeing now in the psychedelic renaissance?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with a lot of Alex's sentiment that, data speaks all. Like it removes all stigma, it removes all opinions and takes it out of the equation. But I don't think we need to rely solely on data. I think that's important, certainly, and we're investing in it. But I'm a big believer in kind of map making and morphogenic fields and all that kind of stuff, which is like, we got to do the work, right? And a couple of the comments came up that, and it may sound sacrilegious saying this on this panel, that like we need psychedelics. We don't need psychedelics at all. We could all do this work ourselves. I just think psychedelics are a platform to get it done faster and maybe more elegantly. Yeah, exactly. I think you described it perfectly, calling it a hack. So, I think that's the most important thing. And that's exactly what we're trying to do with Field Trip, which is we're trying to drive the data. We're trying to educate the medical community. We're trying to mainstream the conversation and really just bring it to the fore. Because I don't look at psychedelics as the end. I just really see it as like a stepping stone. The reason we started Field Trip, at least me personally, I've done a lot of work over the last 15 years or so. And what I kind of saw when someone described a single psilocybin assisted psychotherapy session as being the equivalent of 10 years of therapy, free. I'm like, Jesus, that's what the world needs right now. If like people can get that shortcut and see some of the things that I've experienced through self-reflection and meditation and all that kind of stuff, but if they haven't put 10 years in there but can do it next week, that's fantastic. And that's what needs to happen. So I think it needs to be a holistic, collective, multi-pronged effort. We need science, we need voices, we need people thinking about it, we need people making maps. That's what's got to happen.
We get a lot of questions at Delic about is psychedelic medicine going to be the next green bubble? And if so, what can we learn from it? And I, having been inside the green bubble from the early days, I don't suspect it's going to look exactly the same. Unfortunately, I don't suspect you'll be able to go purchase psilocybin anytime soon from your local dispensary, but there are certain things we can learn from it, especially as companies start to look at the public markets. And you are inside the cannabis space, still are. What do you think?
I think there's definitely a risk. I like to think that we also live in a world where we've learned something from the cannabis sector. So there's a lot of people rushing into the psychedelic sphere. Like when you and I started around the same time, I think Delic and Field Trip were incorporated almost the same month, and we had very early conversations. And since then, I've seen 30 or 40 decks that have pulled information directly out of our corporate deck and put into there. So I guess imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, but a lot of people rushing in, a lot of people not fully thought out, and that's going to happen. But I sincerely hope that we're a little bit smarter, a little bit more thoughtful. I think investors should be. And I think the evolution of this is going to be different. I do think that there's really a capacity for something like Oregon to create a legal market for psilocybin, but it's not going to be dispensary take home. I think it's going to be a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit more thoughtful. And I think that will offset some of the risk, but there's going to be some bad actors in this, and I think what we've got to do collectively is, make sure that the good ones rise to the top and we support each other in doing the right things and supporting the right initiatives. And hopefully the rest will kind of fall out and people will learn from what has transpired in the cannabis industry and learn from watching the good players in the psychedelics industry do it properly.
Yeah, agreed. Well, let's talk about, because there's certainly a demand for psychedelics and there's a supply in the underground market, but there's not an above ground market supply chain really. People are working on that, but I think that's why a lot of people are moving towards the public offering sector. And I'd love for Alex, can I get you back on, just to demystify a public offering? Like, let's break it down 101. What is that? And how is it different from the private sector? Because I think in the world that we live in today, there's very few vehicles that make more sense than bringing the psychedelic business bubble to the public and literally giving ownership of it to the mainstream through a public offering vehicle. So can you break it down for us, Alex?
Yeah, I think let's just start even more basic. I think we got to talk about the investors in this space and the investment landscape and where people in our space have been able to successfully raise capital. So the answer is, it's really twofold. The first answer is the crowd from regular people that so deeply desire and wish for this industry to be a real thing. Orthogonal raised its first round via WeFunder. We did that raise in February of 2019. And the move towards public markets is effectively a fancier, schmancier version of a crowd raise, like you were alluding to, Jackie. But I'll explain why public offerings are important in a second. The second piece of fundraising is really family offices. For instance, with Compass Pathways, Peter Thiel and Christian Angermeyer are basically anchoring that investment, and their whole network is really family offices. Because we can't go to banks and more institutional resources, just because their capital is coming from places that would never sanction psychedelics or never approve of it, now at least. There's kind of a narrow area where companies can raise money, and especially when you're talking about developing a lot of clinics like field trips talking about, or looking at things like clinical trials. These things are really expensive. And because the options are really narrow for raising money, a public offering is a really good way for companies to raise money. And we've thought about this a lot. We actually have in motion a Form 1A document that allows us to crowdfund at a really, really broad scale. And it's exciting, but the thing that I think makes everyone super cautious about public offerings is really the pump and dump model, in which investors are taking money off the table super early, and people are not.
Saw that in cannabis a bunch.
Oh yeah, and so I think people are naturally nervous about that, and I don't blame them. I mean, I think that they're definitely going to be bad operators, and I hope that there are amazing journalists keeping track of the cap stacks on in those companies. But that's what we really need to be worried about when we're looking at public offerings. It's a really savvy way to raise money and for companies to achieve more of their goals and broaden out their shareholder basis. But I think at the same time, we got to worry about, some of these exchanges and the ways that companies are kind of taking advantage of them.
Yeah, there's a lot of people at the table. I'm super stoked and proud to announce the Delic is actually currently working on its own public offering with a group of really grounded, good-hearted people, which is nice to be involved with. And it's been a learning experience, just watching what seems like a bad actor, or what is like a good opportunity to bring a concept in the budding psychedelic space to the masses. But thank you for breaking that down for us.
Sure, my pleasure. I mean, it's daunting in a lot of ways, and I think that we're, as a community, getting better at holding people accountable to this stuff. And I've thought about this a lot, and I can get to this later, but this is specifically why my company's formed a foundation and is making sure to kind of countervail a lot of the norms of typical markets, because of the fact that we want to really prioritize impact and ensure equitability and things of that sort.
And when you say bad actor, can we break that down even more in a practical way? To me, it's people, like you said, who pump and dump, who build this bubble up, this story. They tell a story about a company and they put a value on it that's like way inflated over what their revenue actually is. And then investors come in and then they quickly leave after the buzz, or while the buzz is still hitting about whatever stock that is. Is that what you're describing, or what you're thinking of when you say bad actors?
I mean, that's specifically it. I think it's usually, unfortunately, an older white man that has misled a certain investor segment to really high hopes, and uses the mechanism of exchanging their shares that were owned privately to public purchasers, retail purchasers, and takes money off the table. I don't think that the psychedelics industry is hanging on by a hair, and that any bad actor in particular would really destroy the industry if something went out of whack. But at the same time, we need to be super mindful of this stuff.
Right on. Well said. Thanks so much. Let's talk about consumer safety and access. We get a lot of questions at Delic about access. So there's amazing studies being done, and they've been going on for quite some time now. Some of the studies, though, you can't be an existing psychedelic user. You have to jump through a lot of hoops, and there's a lot of boxes you have to check before you can become a participant. And then in some cases, going to receive a ketamine treatment, for example, can be upwards of $1,000, while ketamine is really cheap to produce to the business. So I'd like to talk about just generally consumer safety and access. Beth, I wonder if you have, since you work in the space with people who are in the space, you talk a lot about consumer safety and how we can create boundaries as a civilized society to keep people safe.
Yeah, this is a complex one. So I'm one of those people. I have mixed views. I am really a believer in being a sovereign being, making your own educational choices. So I highly encourage people to do your research. It's again, Wild West out there. I've seen people give the worst advice ever. My way of being, though, is that everybody has their own choices. Everybody has their own decisions. To me, I really try not to get my ego involved in what is right or what is wrong. So for example, there was an article that came out actually right at the beginning of the quarantine about, kind of the right way to do ayahuasca, meaning like you must work with a shaman who's had this much training and, this. And of course, we all know these medicines can be dangerous. There are definitely dangerous situations. There are people who probably shouldn't be distributing, 5-MeO DMT, these really powerful medicines that are actually quite dangerous if they interact with drugs. But at the same time, I really am, I come from a very libertarian standpoint of like freedom for all. So, it's a tough area to navigate right now. And again, this kind of comes back to why we might need businesses, or we might need actual like some sort of regulation, or at least manifestos. Some of my friends in this industry have created, like guidelines, manifestos, how to find even mushrooms. It's like, okay, yes, we all agree that they're physically safe, but they can be used in an actually very unsafe manner, right? Like we've all seen the worst of the worst. So, there's people literally selling this stuff on Instagram. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I cannot get over the amount of people that are trying to sell me acid on Instagram. But at the same time, it's again, this comes back to really having a solid, sovereign, grounded heart and really educating and getting the messages out. Like someone in the comment was saying about sharing. And when I interviewed Rick Doblin last year for this series that I put on, he said he really encouraged people to start speaking up about it, sharing your good and bad experiences. I have come very out in the open sharing about some negative experiences I've had, and I've learned that lesson very quickly. So the more education content like you're creating, these discussions, panels, I think this is the first step to creating the safety, because again, I don't know if I really believe that, 5 corporations should now own all the medicines available to man. It's like, where do we find this balance
Definitely
point?
not.
I do believe in the black market, so, yeah. And I do believe in what one might call capitalism. I believe in freedom, really, is what it comes down to. But I think
we just have it all.
Yeah. But education,
it all works.
Sharing these stories and sharing the truths about, hey, you have to pick the person you want to go do DMT with, but you might run into some repercussions and that could involve your death. Like we don't want to see death, but it's like, how do we prevent this as a society? I don't know. I don't know the right answer. I would love to hear, others that are actually in the distribution area.
Yeah. Well, I think regulation is important. We live, free enterprise and the freedom to consume as a sovereign being is important, but there's a lot of people on the planet and a lot of consumption, a lot of shit to sift through. So it makes sense to regulate things for public health benefit, because there's always going to be a black market, and that can exist and people can behave within that market as they do with less regulation. But yeah, knowledge is power. Safety first. Put yourself first, love yourself the most, and go, and psychedelics will be there. And so understand and learn as much as you can beforehand. I want to do a really long Q&A so we can get the people to ask the questions that they've been putting in the chat for the last 20 minutes or so. Before that, I'm going to just end with one more formal question that we got in from the Delic audience. And it was, what is the biggest challenge you have seen in the psychedelic space business-wise? So as a business owner or practitioner, what's the biggest challenge you've seen so far? Let's start with you, Brittany, and then we'll go down the line, and then we'll bring on Madison to do a live Q&A.
The biggest challenge, it would be, I would say, the people in charge of everything, because there's just so much resistance. I'm from Ohio, and like we are one of the last. What part of Ohio are you from?
Marysville, which is near Columbus.
But we are one of the last to get on board with anything, because everybody's so conservative around things. And so if the people in charge could open up their minds. I remember when I was getting my first Reiki attunement, my Reiki teacher said, it's not telling them, it's showing them. So there's got to be a way to be able to show people in a supportive space that could break the stigma, because really it's the people in charge that create that resistance,
100%. Beautiful. Ronan, what say you? What's been your biggest challenge?
We've been pretty fortunate that we haven't faced too many challenges. Certainly there's a degree of education that goes into this, but most people who are circling around the space, and certainly all of our investors have experience or know people who have experience with psychedelics. I think the biggest challenge that, is more complex and more nuanced is there's people who fall on the science side and there's people who fall on the spiritual side. And I think the only way this actually succeeds is if there's a pretty deep integration between the two. I fall on the more spiritual side of the people at Field Trip. But I think it's important. And it's like the risks around psychedelics, mostly I think pertain to people who aren't equipped or haven't done the work to put themselves in a position to really manifest the positives of it. I've never seen it personally, but you hear about the idea of like when you have ego dissolution, if you don't properly constrain it and work through it, it can smack back, and you can have people who have extra large egos as a result,
There's
right?
a lot of that.
And so like there's a lot of work that needs to go into it, and people need to be prepared, and it's not for everyone. As libertarian as I am, and I agree with Beth, it's kind of like there's an expectation, there's a responsibility, meaning that there's an ability to respond to your circumstances. And if you're not ready for it, you're not ready for it. And being honest and open and being okay with that, I think, is something that we've got to educate people around. I think that's the biggest challenge that I'm facing, is how to weave that fine line between not being too medical and not being too spiritual, and making sure that those things are kind of moving together and sort of lockstep to make sure we get the most out of this and minimize downside.
Beautiful. I remember a conversation I had with George over a Compass, years ago now, before the pandemic, about personal responsibility, but also responsibility as business owners. And I think if everybody can really embody their own personal responsibility, which is really a form of self-love, and could mean that psychedelics really aren't what you need in that moment. And so I think, really well said. Thank you so much. Beth, what say you?
Sorry, what was it? What was the question again?
What's the biggest challenge, or a challenge that is highlighted in your mind that you've experienced in the psychedelic space business wise?
Yeah, it's the navigation of serving. Like, for example, I have a couple clients that are very trained. One is an actual therapist who's not licensed, but is in one of these, like underground trainings. It's like, you can call it whatever you want, but navigating the fine lines, right? Meaning we know that this can help a lot of people, and it's moving faster than the government regulations want to move, or, who knows what's going to happen. But how do we keep it moving, knowing that, hey, like even my own partner, who's a therapist who does not distribute, he has worked with clients who have done them on their own, where he's kind of been navigating that fine line between like, I don't distribute, I don't get involved, but I will help you with the prep, the during, and the integration. So, again, as a business person and me helping others grow their psychedelic business, where's that fine line between, stating things like I offer this, but maybe it's not legal? Or how do you promote something like, a leadership coach who advocates for microdosing? It's been this kind of gray area, but I'm always one of those more risk taker types. I mean, that's an entrepreneur in itself. And I also believe in this medicine so much that to me, it's the risks outweigh the potential for what could happen. Even just coming out like all of us very publicly about this work. So it's navigating that, but I also believe, like all of us, in the future of the direction it's going. So why not be at the forefront of it, and also know that this is helping people more than I think it's hurting. So
yeah, it's also legal to talk. Currently, I hope I deleted my news app, so I'm not sure if that's changed in the last couple of weeks, but.
Shadow ban. Have you been shadow banned? I've been shadow banned using, do you guys know, this is the one, again, this is also another challenge that there's a certain amount of censorship going on with certain,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that's, that's a whole nother.
Ketamine lost its ability to advertise on Facebook a few weeks or months ago. I'm sure Ronan knows more about that, but it, it challenges the budding space and the entrepreneurs to think differently. And so while it's really frustrating from a business perspective to have to think outside the box in that way, and a little disheartening to not be able to use the language that you're trying to promote. But it pushes you to innovate. And I think that is only good. Last but not least, Alex, talk to us about any challenges that you guys have faced or that you've seen in the industry, and then we'll get to Madison with some audience questions.
I think likewise with Field Trip and Ronan, we haven't had too many obstacles that we didn't foresee and couldn't overcome. But on a personal basis, I think the thing I was struggling most with for a while was kind of the notion of keeping everyone happy. You're not going to be able to make everyone happy. And for a while, I was kind of trying to figure out a mechanism for us to develop business practices that weren't, just committed to equity and access in concept, but, in practice. And I was thinking for a while about how to actually accomplish that. And that's how we came upon this foundation that we launched a couple of months ago, the EI Foundation, which really serves as the impact arm for EI Ventures. And the idea with the foundation is that it'll be kind of the deep roots and protect EI Ventures, I think, from our lesser selves. And at the same time, the inertia of the status quo. And it's really just as simple as being committed to equitable and affordable access, making sure that at least within EI that we remain always committed to plant-based materials. And then I think at the same time, it's being available and listening to and providing a framework for people within the community and outside, and serving them that in a way that we can ultimately accomplish the first two goals. But even in spite of the foundation and, being very thoughtful about this stuff and being involved in the work for a while, inevitably, we're not going to make everyone happy. I think that there are people who fundamentally disagree with the notion of this, webinar in itself, and the notion of the fact that there could be a psychedelic business. And kind of along the lines of what Beth and Brittany were describing at first, I think, it's a different mindset. And ultimately, I don't think that anyone that's trying to create a transformational industry, which I believe psychedelics will ultimately make the people that don't want it to be a business whatsoever happy. And so that was something that for a little while there, I was struggling with.
Oh, wow. Thanks for sharing that. I'd say that if I had to answer that question myself, that would be it as well. Said maybe a little differently, is focusing more on trying to make everyone else happy, or having false idols, or creating an experience from a business perspective that wasn't focused solely on our mission, instead was worried so much about, or focused so much on getting other people's buy-in and creating this kumbaya experience, was something that I learned not to do the hard way in my first year of owning Delic. And I think for everyone listening, when you have your idea, when you have your concept for a business or whatever it is you're doing, to put that first and foremost. The brand identity is the heart and soul and the master, for lack of a better word right now, of what you should be doing. And it's not even really human, right? It's an energy. And if you put all of your focus in that direction and avoid what's happening out here in the ether and just stay true to what you're doing, you'll bypass a lot of wasted time and heartbreak in realizing that you cannot make everyone else happy, but your mission is to your mission and not everyone else. And the more that you do that and put one foot in front of the other in that direction, the more the people will find you and it will come. and just stay true. So with that, let's get into some audience questions with beautiful Madison. Where are you, Madison?
Hello, thank you so much, everybody, for all of your questions during this stream. There's been some really great questions in here, and our speakers have actually been engaging a lot in the chat, so I'm glad that a lot of them have been answered. But something I would like to hear anybody who feels, any of our speakers who feel inspired to talk about, just some current models that exist or need to exist for giving back to marginalized and or Indigenous communities.
I'll hop in here just to break the silence. That's a problem we struggle with all the time. There's the balance between, I think, capitalism, which can be, when done consciously, a very powerful force for good. At the same time, when it comes to psychedelic assisted psychotherapies, they tend to be very labor intensive and therefore expensive, and people shouldn't have to work for free. They should choose to work for free if they want to, as long as it's coming from the right space. Otherwise, you get into the whole question of martyrhood. So it's something we're constantly evaluating. As a simple starting point, one of the things that we've done is we're taking a percentage of revenues and just making them available to help people who can't afford treatment in our clinics presently. But it's a constantly evolving thing, especially also, there's a lot of questions that speak to the Indigenous roots and heritage of psychedelic therapies, and how do you honor and respect that? And again, it's something that we're trying to, find a balance for, because there's no perfect answer to doing so. That's easy. If it was obvious, everyone would be doing it. So it's complex, and it goes back to the whole thing about map making I said before. It's like we're just trying to create a path, and then hopefully other people will come down that path and surpass us, and eventually we'll get to a place where there's a lot more equitable outcomes in this world. But we're starting from where we are, and we're just taking it one step at a time.
I want to add to that, because I feel like the work that we do is ancestral work, right? This is not new, and so in giving back to the Indigenous, and it's the overflow. It's the people who are in this work and the people who are continuing to do this work, and the people who are going to grow businesses in spaces that are of expansion and growth of the new earth, and of just supporting and connecting with one another. It will always overflow, always.
I think that leads perfectly into another question here about how one can build a successful business with psychedelics without upsetting or offending the spiritual sacredness of plant medicine.
I'm happy to speak into that. So again, this really comes down to a perspective. The reality is, I forgot if it was Ronan or Alex, there's always going to be someone that doesn't agree with what you say. I'm sure Jackie has heard everything by now over the years. It's, I call myself a spiritual business coach because it is at the root of every single thing I teach. These medicines have saved my life. They've saved a lot of my clients' life. I'm very much like Ronan. I take a very spiritual stance on it. I also have a tattoo of an atom on my back. I believe in the science as well. So it's, and again, this kind of leads to this is connected to the last question, is the way I see where we are in the evolution of humanity is, it's 2020. So I always honor my ancestors, the Indigenous practices. I do know the lineage of, all the medicines I work with, but we are just an evolution of them. We are and we are not at the same time our ancestors. So the reality is, we're living in this present moment right now on the earth in the state that it's in. And so it's about, and my friend East Forest, who some of you may know, actually put on a virtual mushroom ceremony this weekend. He said, this is about honoring the sacredness, but then also recreating new rituals, new ceremonies. This isn't, like, our ancestors don't want us to throw away these medicines because they're 5,000 years old. They want us to use it to, again, this is what I believe, to create a better life for all, to create a better planet that's in harmony with the sacredness, with the earth. I don't know about you guys, but these are the messages that constantly come through. It's like, help save us. And I do believe a lot of these plant-based medicines are actually speaking to us through the medicine. So again, it's all intertwined, and it all comes back to, your heart and the way you share the message. Yes, I'm very much like Brittany, like Jack, like everybody on here. I love money. I love having money. I get to distribute it wherever I want. I get to give back. And I do believe that it is actually very spiritually necessary to have money and to have the power. So again, it's all in your approach. And there is no, again, this is a mindset shift that Brittany can talk about, this idea of being spiritually broke. Again, that's an old paradigm. That's not the new earth. The new earth is actually abundance, wealth, and spirituality, and science, and living a better life. This is at least what I believe. So
just to piggyback off of that, and I think when we look at businesses in the space and we wonder, like, okay, how can we truly be aligned with the medicine? How can we listen to the medicine? And asking those questions myself, I really wanted to be a part of a company that was plant-based. And what I love about EI Ventures is that anything we do or will do starts from the whole plants. And with that comes a very strong commitment to the plants, protecting their stewards and also the environment. And I think the way that ultimately the business models will win out is by showing how the development of unique formulations and compounds, particularly plant-based ones, will be better than the traditional medicines. And better in that they're easier to digest. They remove things like neurotoxins or other things that create a margin of error. And so they're ultimately creating solutions that are true to the essence of the plant, but are a step up. And the supply chains reflect that. And the medicines themselves create sort of a safety and efficacy profile that's even a notch above the traditional plants themselves.
I think this is a good point to point out too, a good time to point out that when we're talking about psychedelics, and people, I think, still disagree about what substances fall into that bucket, but you take something like ketamine, an LSD, an MDMA, and then you take ayahuasca, psychedelic mushrooms, peyote, San Pedro, and these are like East meets West, if you will, or even South. And I think thinking about like the theme here is including everything into the conversation so that we can come to a balanced new approach that honors our ancestors, but also brings the new modern Western medicine side or lab medicine into the equation too. Yeah. All right, Madison. What else do we got?
So many great questions here. So this is like taking it back to the beginning. We're working with underground product for the most part. What are some new businesses that people can create? Like, a lot of people need education and safety. Some people want a guided experience. Some companies want to grow the compounds. People are asking for specific examples of like what kind of businesses are needed in this industry right now.
I just dropped an answer into the chat and I'll just repeat it out loud for anyone who didn't see it. I see 3 areas of immediate opportunity, not so much specifically in the underground, but some of them extend to the underground. One is we need clinics. We need the clinical infrastructure to do this properly. Whether we like it or not, it's probably going to be a medical prescription for the foreseeable future with ketamine or psilocybin or MDMA. That's probably the path. And so we need new clinical infrastructure. We need the spaces. We need the doctors. We need the therapists. We need all those tools to make a clinic work and do this in a medical context. Whether we like it to be in that context or not, that's probably the foreseeable future. Secondly, technology. There's some really cool things happening like Mendel Kaelin and wave paths and how he's, developing music and AI and responsiveness to make sure people have the most powerful and positive trips and avoid negative trips. Not that there's necessarily a negative trip to be had per se, depending on your perspective, but anything that can improve the experience, make these experiences more available, even without drugs, using VR, anything along those lines, any technology that makes the cost lower for these kind of therapies. And then thirdly, product and drug development, like the work Alex is doing, the work we're doing. All of that is super important because we need more information. We need more studies to help legitimize this. And we'll need new products as well. Psilocybin, MDMA, LSD, they're not perfect for everybody. They're not perfect for every condition. So we'll need a much broader spate of molecules and products to really help as many people as possible. That's how I see the opportunities, at least immediately right now.
Chemists. We need more chemists.
Yeah.
Yes.
And health insurers and health bureaucrats and the kind of unsexy work that is required to really build a whole healthcare infrastructure from the ground up. And yeah, that'll be interesting.
Thanks, guys. All right, Madison, what else?
Well, I had a handful of people asking if such a thing exists. Is there like a psychedelic hotline that people can call if they need help?
There is now.
Yeah.
Not one that I know of. If you guys know of any, jump in. There's certainly organizations that I think provide helpful care, depending on what the need is. dancesafe.org, Drug Policy Alliance. There's quite a few.
So another question that came through was basically looking for advice on how to approach the discussion of an option of psychedelic treatment with a client. This is somebody who obviously does that professionally in some regard. So they're wondering, like, what types are your go-to psychedelics for various conditions? And then how do you even approach that discussion with a potential client?
I think that's a tough one. Because here, well, it brings up something, Madison. We're in this gray area of what we can say and what we can't say. As I started off the conversation saying, there's a huge psychedelic industry. It's just underground. There's a ton of studies currently being done. And if you're a licensed therapist within one of those studies, I think that it's safer for you to then talk about or answer that kind of question publicly. But I don't know, does anyone else have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'm just thinking from my perspective, when I began originally telling friends of mine that I was, moving to Hawaii and I was joining the psychedelic business, I mean, naturally they thought I was insane for a variety of reasons, but they did kind of bastardize psychedelics in a really unfair way, and they were totally stigmatized against them, and really buying into this weird norm this norm narrative that's taken hold. And so how do we counteract that in a way, and how could we use resources that have been in the public domain in a way and perpetuating momentum to have a conversation with the client could be a good way. I mean, Netflix is full of stuff that's been really helpful to pushing the dialogue forward. There's the 60-minute special, and I think it's really, it's a natural balance when you're working with friends or clients. Like you want to encourage them to look into things, but at the same time they have to do the work themselves. And so I don't know, giving them resources, being encouraging and helpful, things like that.
I would just add this one thought, which is like the foundation of what we're doing with Field Trip, which is, you really got to consider what it means to be psychedelic. A lot of people think it's the classic psychedelics like LSD and psilocybin, but the truth is that, at least from our perspective, psychedelic is anything that kind of tones down the default mode network in the brain, opens people up to the effects of psychotherapy, to be quite honest, and turn inward. And so we're doing that with ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. Now, it's not plant-based, it's an entirely synthetic molecule, but people have profound breakthroughs on ketamine, and it's perfectly legal right now. So there's an easy stepping stone. People just have to open their perspective a little bit to what it really means to be psychedelic. It's definitely not as sexy, at least right now. But I think the research will bear out that ketamine is a pretty cool drug. But it's out there, it's available. That's what we're doing in our clinics. And I think it has the capacity to help a lot of people dealing with suicidal ideation, like as Effie was saying before, or even just like going through tough times. It really opens people up. It creates a period of neuroplasticity. It's a powerful and very safe molecule. So there's an easy stepping stone for some who want to explore it.
Ketamine is stunning. Ketamine has been a huge proponent of my own treatment, depression, and I think that we'd have more patients if more people knew about it, hence why you're doing what you're doing, and others as well. And also we say at Delic that life is psychedelic, because it is, regardless of a substance or any substance that you're consuming. This is just all very trippy to begin with. And I think we even have on realitysandwich.com a button page that you can click, what does psychedelic mean to you? So you guys let us know what psychedelic means to you, and we'll put it in a newsletter. Thanks, Ronan, for that. Madison, let's do a couple more questions and then get to our winner.
So the last of these questions, they kind of feel like they may be a touchy subject to be able to answer on live. So if there's a way for us to talk about it, that would be great. But people are asking about how the legality of psychedelics affects business structures and how they're supposed to be able to accept payments, what platforms are safe to do so on, things of that nature. So like think from beginning, starting from ground zero, how do people know where to go, what to do?
I'm just going to hop in here with the little bit I know, but being in Canada, I don't know if there's many Canadians in the audience right now, but there's got to be 50 online stores openly selling psilocybin and LSD, and most of them just take payment through Bitcoin. Some are just taking straight up bank transfers. Maybe Canada is just a little bit more open-minded when it's well, we are more open-minded as a society. But I would say if you want to learn more, because I'm just speaking from what I've seen, check out some of those websites and ask questions. The people I've dealt with who run those sites tend to be very friendly and helpful. So they'd probably be happy to answer some questions for you because they've probably done a lot of diligence on this particular question.
If no one else has anything to add to that, I've got another one here. So do you think that it's entirely necessary to have such a structured business model in order to run a successful psychedelic business in the modern world? Like, is it possible for us to flip that structure somehow?
I would say yes. I would say for now we need structure, we need protocols, we need clinics and trained professionals overseeing a lot of this. I think that we're in the first inning and there's a bit of a narrow window where I think, the cat could get out of the bag and we could lose a lot of momentum here. And so that is why I would say as someone who runs a business in psychedelics, yeah, I think we need to be totally above board. And some of these challenges are really cool. Like I know a lot of the work that Field Trip has to do in terms of getting clearances and getting insurance approvals, like being able to get like reimbursements on ketamine treatments is a pretty cool scenario. At the same time, we're looking into how to manage the red tape, the bureaucratic red tape of, transferring psychedelic medicines internationally or state by state. And these are cool challenges. And if we can overcome those, then I think maybe within 5, 10, 15 years, we won't have to be as structured and we can be more fluid and our grandparents will be more open to this conversation. But for now, I think we have to be really thorough and understand the nuances because it could go wrong. And we've seen that before.
I'd also weigh in that, as much as people think corporations are evil, if you look at the evolution of corporations, they're just a way of organizing people, and organizing money. They exist in the structure that they do because by and large, they've been pretty effective at helping create businesses and helping investors generate returns and encouraging innovation and incentivizing it. So it's not a bad thing that there's so much structure around it. It's a result of hundreds of years of history going into how to organize people in a constructive way.
I would also have to say something about building in business structure is allowing yourself to feel organized and have the support and organization gives you more room and space to really think about the things that you really want to do. Like, what is your mission, right? So in an organization, if we can build a solid foundation, just like Alex said, that solid foundation is then set and then you have fluidity on top of it. So yeah, I think it's important.
Yeah, and I have one quick thing to add because I was going like this. I did a whole training on, so I have a very different way of doing business because I help a lot of people that are more doing psychedelic integration and prep, which does not involve any distribution or direct working with the actual medicines. But, in that case, I don't actually believe that someone needs a training per se because there is no governing body saying this is the proper way to integrate. So I do believe in getting some training of some sort, for example, going through your own deep level experiences for many years, working, like I'm very much a proponent of somatic integration, body-based integration. I feel like that's one of the missing keys. And actually that's a whole different conversation as well. But, the 3 or 4 psychedelic integration coach training programs out there, they're basically just run by people like me and you. So I don't believe that everybody needs to go through one of those programs. For the most part, I think it's about having your own experience and doing your own deep level integration to be able to guide others. I see it as kind of like a life coach for people working with psychedelics. If you're really deep on this path, you need to do the work beyond the medicine itself. That's my personal opinion. So that's where I say, but yes, like Brittany just said, I do agree. You need some kind of business structure, or else monetizing it will be very hard and messy.
I do think, though, that I think over time there will be a kind of a national credential board, or there will be, we're launching a new clinical specialty, and I think that it's important to be very inclusive of who will be accredited and who will be an authorized professional. And at the same time, I think we have to be similarly fluid about understanding the healthcare delivery system and understanding that there will be outpatient clinics, there'll be residential treatments, there'll be centers for excellence, and religious facilities as well. And so I agree on one hand it's going to be very fluid, but I think at the same time there will be specializations and certifications and things like that.
Agreed. All right, guys. Well, we could talk about how to grow psychedelic business for hours, but we won't. And before we close out here, I want to announce our winner of the Meet Delic tickets. The first winner is Edward Holgan. Edward Holgan, thank you so much for being a part of the Delic community. You win 2 tickets to Meet Delic 2021. Please email us info@meetdelic.com with your information, and we'll get you all set up. I'm told here Edward is a vet. God bless you. Thank you for your service to the country. And I don't know if you've tried ketamine or if you even are interested in it, but there's a lot of resources out there for ketamine and veterans. And then there was one other person I kept seeing the name of, I'm going to pronounce it Zuki. There's an O and an X, Zuki. You're amazing. Thank you for being so interactive. We're just going to give you some tickets too. So email info@meetdelic.com. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for another wonderful Meet Delic Live Presents. Thank you to our experts, Alex, Brittany, Beth, Ronan. Thank you so much, guys, for taking time. Everybody go visit their respective sites and support them. Thank you to my Delic team. I could not do any of this without all of you wonderful people. And thank you all for being a part of the psychedelic revolution. Whether you take psychedelics or not, you are already a part of it. You are here and your voice is counted. Our next free live event will be September 1st. You can check out all of our live replays on YouTube. Thank you guys so much. One love, all love.
Thanks, Jackie.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Jack.